Hello and welcome to the IO Thinker, where we explore the world of international relations one critical issue at a time. I'm Martin Zupko. Myanmar occupies a unique position in the contemporary international affairs, where the legacies of post-independence neutralism, decades of military rule, and a fractured post-coup order converge to produce one of the most complex foreign policy environments in the Indo-Pacific. From the structural pressures of Sino-Indian rivalry and the Belt and Road Initiative to the normative contests over sanctions, sovereignty, and diplomatic recognition, Myanmar crisis illuminates broader tensions between the great power competition, regional institution building, and the limits of international law in managing state fragility. Let's elaborate on that a bit more with my today's guest, Dr. Y. Yang Phyo Naing. Hello.
Thank you very much for having me, Martin. It's my pleasure to participate in your podcast and share about my inside knowledge on my country and the regional study.
Dr. Naing is a visiting scholar at the Institute of Modern History, Academia Sinica, under the Taiwan Fellowship Program. At the moment, he is focusing on modern Myanmar's domestic politics, democratizations, and international relations, with a particular attention to Myanmar-Russia and Myanmar-China relations, and also their implications for regional security, political development, and social change. In this role, he conducts independent and collaborative research, drawing on archival materials, historical documents, and qualitative sources. His current project, Insights from Taiwan's Democratization, Implications for Upcoming Reform Processes in Myanmar, examines how Taiwan's experience of democratization can inform prospective political reforms in Myanmar. Let's start with the first question. How has Myanmar's post-independence tradition of neutralism and military-led isolation shaped its contemporary foreign policy doctrine, particularly its preference for strategic hedging?
That's a good question. In the current situation, I've been asking myself, and I've been asking Myanmar foreign policy by myself. Like, is this really stay in neutralizing and independent foreign policy, or we are still practicing the independent and neutralizing in the foreign policy or not yet? So, yeah, maybe we have a very big debate on this issue among the Myanmar scholars and the regional study scholars from Southeast Asia because of the current situation in Myanmar. In Myanmar, we are now under the military administration. If I have to say, we are still under the military administration, but we are hoping to see the new military-backed government in next month, in April. But until now, they are pronouncing, even military administration, they even pronouncing themselves as they are still exercising the neutralizing and the independent foreign policy whenever they have to initiate the Myanmar foreign policy to the other countries. But on the other hand, the trust building between the Myanmar and China, if I have to say that in the regional bit country, is a little bit not in the good stage, if I have to say. That's why the military government, they are trying to hedging and balancing with Russian by developing many kind of collaboration and cooperation with Russian government. At the same time, they also have some difficulties to exercise the neutralizing and the independent foreign policy in the current situation because of they have faced many challenges and many sanctions, especially political and economically sanctions from the US and the Western country and from other countries too. Especially sometimes they even have some political sanction or political difficulties, if I could say, even from the ASEAN organization, ASEAN. Yeah, even though they are still talking about that they are still exercising the neutralism and independent foreign policy in Myanmar, but uh, I could say that the current situation and current political pressure from the international communities and regional communities also push Myanmar to hedging and Myanmar to approach more, initiate more approach to Russia and the other the so-called friendly country for them, for the military administration, you know. But on the other hand, they cannot go away from China, absolutely, because of course China is just beside our door. They have to understand it. And China is the global power now. So they need to understand about these facts and figure, even though they don't like the China absolutely. And they are really not only the military, in Myanmar, or also the civilian government, the previous civilian government, and also the other politicians. They are not truly trust on China and Chinese influence in Myanmar, and they are very trying. We are very aware of Chinese influence in Myanmar domestic politics and national reconciliation projects, peace projects. So they are always trying to find another factors to make to create a hedging process and check and balance with the Chinese influence in Myanmar. So that's why not only the military administration, if I have to say, as from the subject perspective, not only the military administration, but also the previous civilian NID administration. Also, they also trying to hedge and engage with their so-called friendly organization and a friendly country for them as much as they can. So that's why now also military administration trying to approach with the India, not only with the Russia but also with the India and other countries in Southeast Asia. Now as they're trying to they already have a good connection, and at the same time they're trying to promote their relations with Thailand, and in the current situation also with the Thailand too, So yes, they are trying to. I mean, whoever governed the Myanmar, they are trying to. They I'm really sure they will not deviate from the social sorry national neutralism and the independent foreign policy, because they should understand that Myanmar, because of the Myanmar geopolitical location, geopolitical location, they cannot choose they cannot choose the one side. You know, they have to be a neutral and wise. They have to practice and exercise the neutral, independent, and wise foreign policy in Myanmar. You know, so that maybe some people may not agree with the Myanmar state exercising the neutralism or independent, but on the other hand, uh, according to the official record and official speeches from the administrative leader or political leader, they are still exercising the neutralism and independent foreign policy, but at the same time, they need to adjust according to the international peer pressure and international situation in the region. Yes.
Based on your research, what do you think is the main cause of the crisis in Myanmar? Because for for the Western world, the situation is very complicated because of history, because of different ethnicities, different people living in Myanmar.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
based on your research, because this is your country, so what would you say about those main causes? And even if you can slightly simplify that explanation so we are able to understand it in such a short time.
If I have to say in the one word, it's very clear and it's very visible word that I could use. This is the trust. We are losing trust on each other, and not only it's that's happening is not only between the military and opposition, not only military opposition, but also the Myanmar and the other ethnics people and ethnics at the same time. I really hope that we could be a better future and we could have a better situation to build up the trust among the local people, not only the local organization, local institution, and local people and local ethnics, lacks from 2011 to 2020 before the military coup. So, but after the military coup, if I could say that, like, it's we already lost trust completely each other. You know, we are divided by the two groups now. One group is support to the military, another group is support to the revolution in Myanmar. If I have to reflect with my generation, I'm the 1990s generations. You know, we got a chance to taste the taste of reform. I don't want to say like democracy or something like that. I mean, taste of reform process, 2011 to 2020. You know, so we know that, and I mean, for my generation, I was grown up under the military administration. You know, since I was born, so we know that what is the situation under the military administration. You know, what's the situation, we've been through a lot. What is the situation of the isolation from the international communities and something like this, you know. So after 2011, after we have a chance to taste of the reform process 2011 to 2020, I mean, honestly, we don't want to go back before the situation before the 2021. Even though my generation feel like this, you know, if I could say that the generation Z and generation Alpha, they would have more feeling on this issue, you know, because they were born in the high technology era, and they know what is the situation in not only in the country but also in the other country, you know, but also in the international era. In my generation, you know, until now I have one. Let me tell you one funny things. Like I feel I got a feeling after I travel in Southeast Asia and now in Taiwan. In this country, in those region, you know, in this region, Japanese Japanese manga books, you know, the Japanese manga book, right? The Japanese cartoon and Japanese animation manga books are very like Doraemon or something like that, you know, very famous in 1990s to 2000 to 2010 or something at that time, you know. But for me, I don't know it. I don't know they are that much famous in the same generation of my from Thailand and Taiwan and something like that, you know. So I feel like I mean, later I noticed that this is because of the isolation at that time, you know. So now I mean, in the current situation, the condition is very changed from from 19 to 2000, you know. At that I started use my smartphone in 2007 when I was in the university, when I started in university. In the current situation, all the generation, the new generation, Z and Alpha, they were born holding the iPhone or smartphone in their hand, you know. So they can access the information of the international community, international situation very easily than us. At that, in our time, we got only access from what we saw on the TV, you know. At that time, it also didn't have many TV channels. As far as I remember, until 2011, we have only 4 or 5 channels in Myanmar until 2011, before starting the reform process. The situation is changing. You know, the current situation is changing. Current dynamic is changing. Current international telecommunication, international IT process is changing. It's changing a lot all the time. You know, so that's why I didn't support that's one of the reasons I didn't support the military coup what it's happened in 2021, you know, because I'm pretty sure that, I mean, we even in my generation, we took a time to build up the trust between the military and people, the citizen, from 2011 to 2020, but we didn't achieve at all. I mean, more than I could say that more than 70%. More than 60% until 2017, we achieved the trust building between the military and the people, But after 2017 to 2018, 2019, 2020, after military coup, that trust, that stage of trust building is totally collapsed in Myanmar generation, So not only collapse between the military and opposition and Myanmar generation, but also with the ethnic group, Now ethnic group are also, some ethnic group, they are even thinking like that problem is between the Myanmar government and Myanmar military. Some of military ethnic group, they are even thinking like that. But actually, this is not a problem between the two Myanmar groups. If I have to say, two Burmese group, if I had to say like this is the national problem, the trust building is the national problem. If you go into deep down the Myanmar current Myanmar contemporary Myanmar history and Myanmar political situation, you could clearly see that like we are losing the trust not only between the Myanmar Burmese institutions, but also the ethnic institution. Between ethnic group, different ethnic group, and between Myanmar Burmese and ethnic group, between the Burmese institution, we are losing the trust everywhere. That's not a good condition for my country. If I have to say, like we should pay attention on it as a very important national interest in the coming years. Otherwise, we will lose our identity and our country, if I could say like.
Geopolitically, you have China and India as a very influential partners or neighbors. Can we explain China and India, what they support, and what's the influence of these two countries on Myanmar's policy? I mean, foreign policy.
I don't know for the other scholars and other people, but for me, for myself, I always recognize China and India as a friends. We close friend. We have to be. We have to initiate the good future together since we are living each other. Living side by side. And another thing is like even in the community, if you don't like your neighbor, you cannot easily move out of the community easily. So now we are talking about the country situation. My country is just located between the India and China. If we cannot remove our country because we don't like the one of our neighbor. It's impossible things. So what should we think about is like how we should initiate a good collaboration and good cooperation between among the countries with China and India. But at the same time, we also should strongly stand on our national interests. What I would like to say is like, because it doesn't. You could feel like clearly see like we have only 51 million population in Myanmar. In China, you can see how much amount of population, In India, say, if we can use, political economics, if I could say like, according to political economics, if we are like we can use that kind of advantages, we are sitting in the middle of big two consumer population. We can produce some kind of things to serve them. But with China, I could say that it's a little bit kind of complicated in the Myanmar the situation, the relation with China in Myanmar, because of one of the important thing is also trust between the China and Myanmar. That's the two different story in Myanmar and China relationship, if I have to say. One story is the relationship between the G to G, government to government, China and Myanmar. And second one is people to people relationship, For the Myanmar people, this is the nature of people. This is the behavior of people. If they don't like the one group, they are ready to listening the opposition group opinion. Who also don't like their enemy. So something like that. If things that's what I could say that if I have to connect with my previous answer, right? our generation, we are always thinking like China supporting the military administration to be less long in the position. So we are not we are not we are not so we never favor on China, and we are always criticizing China when China always support the military administration or something like that, you know. So so we are losing on we are always thinking like China always support the military, something like that, you know. So when China started, another thing is like one this is one thing that that the Beijing or Chinese politicians they need to think about how they improve the relationship between the people to people relationship between Myanmar and China. You know, because if I could say, it's like sometimes we need to rely on the Chinese technology and Chinese investments too, because they are the global power now. We cannot ignore this actual facts. You know, but at the same time, if I said before, like we also think, we also strong on our national interest or something like that. You know, when I used to work as a journalist in Myanmar before I studied in Moscow, and one time I got a chance to visit one or two Chinese big investment infrastructure project in the Mongolia, and everyone knows about Labdown copper mine projects. I got a chance to visit there, and I a little bit surprised that I noticed that they even brought the cleaner from China in their project office. You know, this is an accessible things for me. Unfortunately, you know, I'm not looking down my local people, but at least they can hire local people to that kind of position. You know, but I don't know what is the problem, but they didn't hire. They even brought the cleaner from the China. So this is, another thing is like they are all at the time. I don't know they are changing or not nowadays. But at the time, they even thinking about like that, giving the compensation to the local people for the project is already enough for them. I mean, okay, this is a very different tradition from Myanmar mindset and Chinese mindset. You know, Chinese people are always ready to go around the world to earn money to do business. They are ready to go around the world. You know, they like to relocate place to place, you know, for the business. But Myanmar people, the real Myanmar, I'm not talking about the people from Yangon or Mandalay, you know, the real Myanmar, they are not that kind of people, you know, they are always stick on their hometown and home city, you know, they can, when how much they got as difficulties and even natural disaster, they don't care. They are always want to stick with their home and house and their uh trees and their plantations and their hometown, you know, all the time. You know, that's a different mindset between the China and Chinese people and Myanmar, you know. But when they started talking about the project area or something like that, they think that when they use the money, they can solve the problem very easily. But on the other hand, whenever whenever they use the money to solve the problem, they the most they use the most they use money to solve the problem, the most they lost the confidence and trust from the local people. You know, that's the main things. For the okay, I will keep it for the other questions because I want to say also about the India. For the India is also, they are also playing on their national interest ground. You know, that's very understandable for me because everyone is playing on their own interest, even in the people level. You know, and so okay, but on the before they are trying to communicate and support, as far as I know, India, they wanted to support and communicate with the opposition people and other politicians for the democratization and revolution. But on the other hand, they also understand that, I mean, they still need to communicate with the military, you know, if they want to counterbalance and or hedging with the Chinese influence in Myanmar. You know, they cannot ignore the military presence in Myanmar. Whatever they wanted to uh, expand their interest in Myanmar and the Southeast Asia region, because they completely understood that Southeast Asia region is already in the Chinese hand, Chinese government hand, or under the Chinese government influence. For among the average local people, if I could say that if we have to choose between the India and China, many people will choose India more than over China, even though they know that everyone is playing on their interest ground, but still because of the reason I have mentioned before, like of the local people opinion on Chinese influence and presence in Myanmar domestic polity and Myanmar domestic reform and Myanmar domestic situation.
How has the emergence of the national unity government complicated questions of diplomatic recognition or the sovereignty in international law? And can you please explain what does national unity government mean in the current situation in Myanmar?
I want to be in the pragmatic way and the realistic way, because I'm really I like as a academy, I like a pragmatic positive pragmatic and realistic point of view and theory. So I mean, we do hold a lot after the coup up on the NUG and NUG. But in the current situation, if what I learned from the average people, like we are losing our hope on them too. I mean, we haven't seen yet many notable achievement between the notable achievement on the issue for the difficulties, how much they can solve the current difficulties of the people facing in Myanmar and in Burmese people all around the world. So we still need. Now we are having a draft on NUG, like how much NUG can go further. On the other hand, NUG still have a political representative in UN instead of the military administration. Political representative in UN over the military administration. But on the other hand, I don't know how much they approach to the Beijing, or I don't know how much they talk with how much they have had meetings with Beijing or New Delhi on Myanmar issues or something like that, especially with the current ASEAN chairman or something like that, because sometimes I feel like they are too much relying on the Western and the US. I mean, sometimes I even wanted to say that are they forgotten about the presence of China and India in Myanmar? Because if they want to do they want to do some revolution, they wanted to do some reform in Myanmar, they cannot forget about the presence of India and China. Because as I mentioned before, they are a very big country in the region, and as well as they are the global powers. I mean, that's the same thing what NUG and the current military administration. What I want to say is like one similar things. The current military administration, they're also trying to approach Russia more than before, and trying to approach in every way over the China. I mean, yes, you can approach Russia. I mean, you can improve relation with Russia. That's good. That's a good thing. But please don't forget, China is just beside you. If you want to buy something from China, I mean, wine and gas or something like that, but it's still okay. You can buy, but you need to think about the logistic. This is not a close distance. This is a very huge, very long distance for thinking about the logistic. And this is the same thing what I want to say to the NUG government too. And I mean, China is just beside the Myanmar. Instead of you are talking too much with the India, too much with the Western country and and the US or something like that. I mean, you should discuss about Myanmar situation with China, India, and other ASEAN country very actively in every situation. I mean, okay, yeah, it's very good that they are talking about or they are organizing some kind of workshop or talk show or some conference in the Czech Republic or the other eastern part of new European country. This is good for international audience and international European audience. But who care in the region? In Myanmar and in Southeast Asia region. Do China, I don't think China would care on that kind of things. And I don't care. I don't think India would care on that issue too. And not only India and China, but also ASEAN, they will not care about it. If they need to, if they really want to end the trust and productive collaboration from the China, India, and ASEAN, they should talk about India, ASEAN, and China. At the same time, because of their political, ideologically political shift after founding the NUG, I mean, in the current situation, I doubt that China also happy to talk and communicate with NUG, because now I'm pretty sure that Beijing already have doubt on NUG, that maybe they may think that NUG is the products from the Western and the US. I mean, so they even need to careful more than before whenever they have to communicate with the NUG or something like that. That's not a good situation for NUG, because they ignoring too much about the local and regional policymakers and regional big guys, if I have to say, as a generation war. So I mean, I'm pretty sure that nowadays most of the Myanmar people, local people, average Myanmar local citizens, even especially the people who are stay involved who are stay participating in the revolutionary process from PDF and something blah blah, something that kind of organization or institution, they are not so happy with the progress of NUG. So NUG should think about serious reform.
I'm interested in particularly what's going on at the borders. You have refugees, you have some arms going and coming to the country, and also some illicit economic networks. So from your perspectives, because you are connected to your country, what can you say about that?
I said that we have a very huge problem with the trust building on each other, and I told like now we are always now, or most of the people, most of the groups, ethnic groups, including Burmese ethnic groups, they are only focusing on their own business and own interests. I said to you before previously, because of I wanted to say something. Maybe you remember that 1027 happened in the 2023 in October, and one of the some ethnic group in the eastern part of Myanmar, they also captured the one big city in the eastern part of Myanmar, and near the China border area, and military lost the one regional command center in that operation, led by the ethnic militant group in eastern part of Myanmar. At the time, if I have to take my previous answer for connecting with the NUG think about that the NUG, surprisingly, NUG think about that militant group ethnic militant group, they are supporting the revolution process of energy in the country politic situation, But after 2 or 3 weeks later, we began since that time. I'm thinking I don't know. This is not true. They are just doing what they want or what just for their own interest. You know, not for the not for the national interest. If I have to say like the revolution or democratization is as a national interest, I mean those ethnic militant group are fighting and started the 1027 operation not for the democratization, for their own interests. What I could say is like they should understand it, and UG should understand on this issue, but they are proud of themselves at that time. So I really surprised on that case, why NUG think like that or something like that. But later it's become more clear, why those ethnic militant group started that operation, And later, surprisingly, you see that because of the Chinese influence, they reached the ceasefire with some agreement between the ethnic militant groups and the military administration. And they even surprisingly, because of the Chinese negotiating, if I have to say like that word, I mean, because of the Chinese negotiation, that the militant group, they even agreed to give back the Lasho, city to military administration, So what I want to say is like you can imagine how big Chinese influence on that militant groups, not only the militant groups, but also on the military administration too. Especially in that border area. You know, and and China also clearly, as far as I as long as I hear from my connection and my sources, China clearly told them like they are not going to support for the further operation. They were going to support the military administration because they don't want to communicate with the different groups and different militant on ground to open and to get a smooth operation for the border trade. What makes for this case, we cannot say like China is not fair. We cannot say because they are thinking on their national for their interests. We cannot we are not thinking on their on our national interests. We are thinking on our own institutional interests. That's a bit different between we and China. That's why China choose the military because they clearly told that like if the military wing, they need to discuss and they need to communicate and they need to collaborate only with the military. They don't need to talk about the various kind of small militant local, small local militant group on ground, to get a better solution and smooth operation on for the border trade. We, that's the reality. What what I would like to say is like, we should think about it, right? So that's why I also very surprised, and I also uh, talk about why energy's thinking is something beyond the realistic and not pragmatic for their policy making process, and at the same time, why the military administration, why they are also thinking is also not pragmatic and realistic. Another thing is like we are, if I have to say like a historian or academician, we like the pricing war, pricing to the leader. Is it according to their historical record in Myanmar. Very into according to the many archive. We're thinking like in Myanmar we call Yimye Tekin Kishin mean. It means that like all land and or water or resources, national resources were owned by the king or the leader of the country or something like that. The military institution way of thinking and practicing is like kind of not 100%, but they are also still practicing some kind of monarchy practice inside the institution, because the one man decision is absolute decision in military. The top, the decision is go by the top to down, not down to top. So they are always looking at the behavior and the feeling of the leaders, top leaders. They don't want to say no, I cannot say they don't want to say. I should say that they don't dare to say the truth and real situation to the leader. Because they're afraid that they will have some bad consequences because of their report or something like that. So they are also losing from their reality from the ground. I think NUG cannot remove that kind of Burmese DNA from their political way of thinking and grouping inside the NUG. What I feel like is like stays the same. They are also still thinking about the real, absolute Burmese way of thinking and something like that. And that kind of DNA, praising the leader too much, or something like that. So that's why they also lost they also lost from the reality on the ground. Why China and India, if I have to say, like why China is mostly focused on the realities and pragmatic way to get a smooth border trade and to get a smooth operation for their infrastructure projects. At the same time, but that's what happened. Mostly what happened in the beginning of the 2000, after the military coup. But nowadays, like you mentioned that there is a conflict economic or conflict economic situation now because now the people, some so-called revolutionary groups and so-called revolutionary leaders from PDF and NUG, they began understand and know about how they can do business by using the revolutionary names, if I have to say. So as long as revolution is still going on, it means they can continue their business as much as they can on ground. This is the same situation with the military. I'm trying to be okay. I will be honest. I try to be honest and middle as an academic. This is the same situation. If we look back to the people from Nebula, now they are also fighting for their own interests and own business. They are facing many problems in dividing powers in this day, in this week, and next week we may see the a little bit conflict between them because they are now dividing the power, or not. It's become another different story from if we have to compare with the previous 5 years. Previous 5 years, one man is holding the all powers on his hand, But starting from the next man, starting from now, he has to divide his powers to the legislative, administrative, and the juristic branch. Now even though they are not talking in the public, but we are also hear from the inside, like they are started as some small conflict for the power dividing. Because of the military leader, he wanted to become a president. Now the leader of the winner party, USDP, cannot be a president. He he just became a speaker of the lower house, Natituloto. Conflict economy is now starting not only inside the opposition side but also in the side who are holding the power too. So I do really worry for my country, honestly, because nowadays I don't have too much hope from NUG because they are not in the absolute power, if I have to say. Yes, they have a support from the people, some support from the people, but not that much strong as before now. And at the same time, the military administration, they have a power now. They are started. They are announcing. They already announced and they have started the reform process again. But at the same time, they also having a problem and difficulty situation with the dividing power among each other in the same group. I mean, we also see that like we also have an experience in 2011. 2000, if we are to compare with 2011 and the current situation, 2011 was very stable at the time. Senior General Tan Shui handed over the power to his students. To his student and divided the power very easily and very peacefully. And the political situation in Myanmar at the time also was stable. But in the current situation, I mean, Senior General Mayor, he doesn't have full support from even from his military, if I could say, and not from the USDP too. At the same time, the USDP is also from the almost from the different people, almost like a different people from the military. And on the other hand, on the ground, they cannot control every country. The political situation is not so stable. So, I mean, and on the other hand, because of the policy mistake or the domestic political situation, with the current local people are very facing very unpleasant situation in economics in their daily life, high inflation rate, high price. Now because of the Middle East issue, they are facing the shortage of the gasoline or energy sources. So I do really worry if because if they cannot uh, they cannot initiate a very smooth power division within 2 months or within this period. I mean, in April and in May. I mean, I'm not expect to see any good physical policy or economics or business policy from the new administration in Myanmar, because they will spend their time by fighting each other to get in power.
We mentioned India, we mentioned China geopolitically, and we have to say that Myanmar is a big country. It's like France and Italy combined when we take the European perspective. So geopolitically, it's a big area in Asia and very strategic. But I think it's good to explain what's the national interest of Russia, because China and India, that's logical. But as you said, Russia is far away. So why is Russia involved in Myanmar's politics or foreign policy?
I maybe a little bit disagree with you. I mean,
Mhm.
for Russia involving in Myanmar politics and Myanmar foreign policy, because they never involved, they never trying to influence as China and India.
Okay.
What Russian thinking is like very simple. If I could say like that, I have to say like if I could say that I a little bit understand more than other people on Russia. If I could say that Russia interest is very simple. Like they want to do business. That's all. They don't care whoever governing in Myanmar or whoever taking the power in Naypyidaw. They don't care. What they care is like they wanted to do business. They wanted to sell their technology, their weapons, their weapons, and they wanted to invest some kind of things in Myanmar. or something like that. Because now they are also facing a lot of international peer pressures and sanctions from the Western and the US. So they also need to find new partners in different regions from different regions. That's a simple reason for them. That's why they're trying to communicate with Myanmar seriously more than before after military coup. Okay, that's another reason. What I could say is that you will be understand if I have to explain this issue. Senior General May Online, he started visit Moscow since 2013, as far as I remember, 2013 to 2020 until he initiated the coup in Myanmar. He visit Russia every year. In some year, almost 2 or 3 times. So that means that he literally do not trust on China. That's why he wanted to initiate the communicate. He wanted to initiate the beautiful relations with Russia and the pragmatic and want to hedging in the development of military at that time. As far as I know, since 2013 to 2020, he always requests a call with President Putin. And every year, whenever he visits to Moscow, he requests a call with Putin, but Putin never granted that call. Because, this is also understandable because Putin is the head of the state, At that time, the Senior General Mayor is just the commander in chief, in Myanmar constitution, he is the same rank as vice president, but in the protocol in the protocol of Russia, it's a different position, So Putin never granted, but Putin granted after he became the head of so-called head of state after 2021. But until that time, Putin still treat him as a head of government, not the head of state. Because Putin, for the Russian government, they cannot fully support Myanmar in politically. If they fully support them politically, it means that they are supporting them coup. Until now, Russian media never mentioned about the military coup, and some media they mentioned about the never talking. Never addressing him as a Myanmar government or as a head of state, as long as I told you. Even the Russian national television or national media, they are still caring about whenever they addressing the Myanmar militant leader or something like that, So what I want to say is that's the very wise and very clever move from Russia, because what I could say, as I said before, they don't have the big agenda or serious agenda to support the Myanmar politically. They just wanted to cooperate for development in the development of the producing some energies or some national resources or some kind of investment in Myanmar. Another thing is Russia is desperately need money now because they are losing their economic power as long as they are stay in the conflict with Ukraine because of the sanction and because of the daily expenses because of the conflict. So if you check the Russia just the latest appointment of President Putin to the Russian federal institutions, like the new the new minister of the Ministry of Defense. He is not a military general. He is economics. The new minister of defense of Russia. is his economics. At the same time, the guy who just visited Myanmar last month from the Rostendan, uh, Rostendan, he's also the economics. you know Even though they are talking about, they are representing the one guy is representing the different, one guy is representing the Russian space agency or something like that. They are economics, and they are also traveling to their friendly countries a lot. It means that they are selling their technology and their weapons, because they need money. This is very simple for them. They need money and they wanted to sell. And Myanmar itself, that larger customer after Vietnam and Indonesia, purchasing weapons and military equipment from Russia. Another thing is like, I mean, why I could say that Russia doesn't have much amount of money to invest like China is like we could clearly see the one military offer Russia to invest in the Dawei DC port projects. That project is located in the southern part of Myanmar, just very close to the Thailand, and that project initiated by the Thai Italian company long times ago, and they wanted to bid at the DC port projects, and they wanted to uh, like for the logistic hub in Southeast Asia after the big DC port project in Singapore, but they cannot invest it because of the current Myanmar, because of the political instability in Myanmar. At the same time, now the military administration offered this project to Russia. Russia also interested on it, but after ground check, they also become very slow to invest in Myanmar because they don't. This is a big project. They don't have enough money. That's one thing. Another thing is like they know that this. They also know that China already has a another similar big project in the western part of Myanmar in Jiaopyu DC port project. China also started and initiated and started operating the wine and gas pipeline from Jiaopyu to Yunnan province. So Russia also very careful because Russia already recognized as ASEAN is the region of China, not for them. They cannot initiate big influence on Southeast Asia. If they initiate big influence on Southeast Asia, they will have to talk with China. They don't want to talk with China for this kind of nonsense things for them because nowadays China is their big partner in the war. In the current situation, they cannot lose and they cannot fight with China because of that small mistake or small things. Another thing is like now Myanmar and Russia also signed for the 5-year agreement on military cooperation. That's also only for the uh, producing some small equipment and some kind of military technology or something like that. So apart from this, Russia doesn't have too much strong interest on Myanmar. And another thing is like Russia. What I hear from Russia side is like Russia also depressing with the Myanmar policy. Myanmar policy is not so stable, and sometimes they have a difficulty to communicate, and they have difficulty to initiate the investment. Because in the current situation, the Naypyidaw doesn't have a stable policy. And I hear the one things like they wanted to invest one solar project or something like that, some kind of technological related project in Myanmar. But I mean, Russian people are not good in patient. That's what I could say is that they wanted to do it right now. They are like this, They people like that. But Myanmar people and Myanmar policy maker, the Naypyidaw people, they are not like this, They are always checking the decision maker mind. Is he really okay to talk about this? Or if he not okay, if it's okay, we can wait for the next week, But on the other hand, in the meantime, Russian doesn't want to wait. They want to get a result or something like that. So they removed that project from Myanmar to Laos. Laos, I mean, what they mention is like Laos has stable policy, stable domestic position, domestic politics, and also the stable leadership. So they can talk effectively with Lao more than Myanmar leadership, so that they are going to invest that project in Laos, not in Myanmar. So that's why I could say like in the very simple way is like they are just only for the business, not too much for politics. Yeah.
The last question for today's interview. Why has ASEAN's 5-point consensus failed to produce meaningful progress, and what does it reveal about the institutional limits of non-interference?
Oh, that's a problem of ASEAN consensus and ASEAN constitution. If I have to say that, in ASEAN constitution we have a consensus. We base on the consensus. All members have to agree in every point. That's one thing. Another thing is like at the time, as far as I remember, I hear from my connection, like military leader when he participate in that meeting, he didn't understand what is the consensus fully, and how he can initiate the presentations or something like that. So he feel like one ASEAN and now the 5-point consensus, he feel like he's betrayed by the ASEAN leaders. But he didn't say any agree or disagree with the 5-point consensus in that time at the time. That's one thing. Another thing is like the culture of ASEAN. I mean, the political culture of ASEAN. I mean, ASEAN is very diverse even in the political culture. We have democratic country, we have communist countries, we have authoritarian. I could say authoritarian country, one party country. If I could say that, they are just playing their own business, even though they are talking about the ASEAN in the ASEAN or something like that. I mean, yes, now they refuse Myanmar to participate in the ASEAN meeting for the political position. But on the other hand, they are still communicating with Myanmar. Even in the last Myanmar election in November and December, ASEAN institution announced that they will not support and they will not send any observation group to Myanmar election. That's what they announced by representing the ASEAN group. But in reality, in some country, they send the observation group to the Myanmar elections as a country. I mean, so that's a reality of ASEAN. So in Nebula side, they are thinking like, okay, ASEAN is not agree everything what we did or what we have done, and ASEAN always pushing to agree on to initiate a 5-point consensus all the time. But on the other hand, some big member of the ASEAN, they are still communicating with us. They are still initiating some projects and issues, and they are still continuing the relationship with us. So we really need to care on the 5-point consensus or something like that. That's what maybe people are thinking. That's why I could say that this is a weakness of ASEAN institution and ASEAN group, not because of the military administration from Nepal.
Dr. Naing, many thanks for sharing your research insights. I know it's difficult to talk about the country, especially when the conflict is ongoing, and it's probably very difficult to visit it at the moment or just to move within the country. So therefore, I greatly appreciate that you shared your insights with us. As a person that you are from the country, you are talking about your own people, and you want a bright future for your country. So many thanks for being on the IR Thinker.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's my pleasure to share about my insight. And I do hope that it would help something and in some stage for my country and my people. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.